With me in studio is Dr. Emily Landau, Senior Research Fellow and Head of the Arms Control and Regional Security Program at INSS. Dr. Landau, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Most of the world's attention now, of course, is looking at the Korean Peninsula and the nuclear crisis happening there. But this week, the President of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, saying that Iran could quit the nuclear deal, could rip it up within hours if the US imposes further sanctions. Is there a collision course happening here?
Well, I think we're seeing two parallel developments. I mean, there's a North Korean development, there's an Iranian development. In some respects, there's influence from one case to the other, but in other respects, they're moving forward in parallel. In both cases, we're talking about a highly determined nuclear proliferator. North Korea already is a nuclear state, and what it demonstrated last month is the fact that it has the ability to reach the United States with an ICBM, with a long-range ballistic missile, which, you know, changed the situation, and that's why we heard the reaction from Trump and that whole dynamic there. With Iran, we have the Iran nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, which has not taken care of the issue as it was presented back in 2015. Of course, with all the fanfare, Iran has been stopped from ever becoming a nuclear state, and it's clear that that's not the case. There are problems with the deal, and in the year and a half that Obama remained president after the deal was presented, we saw an emboldened Iran. We saw Iran using the deal in a cynical way to sort of cow the Obama administration into not reacting to all of its provocations and aggression, from the missile tests through the increased military presence in Syria, the war crimes there, the fact that they're continuing to transfer weaponry to Hezbollah. All of this they were doing, and Obama was not reacting because he was fearful that the Iranians would leave the deal. I think with this recent statement from Hassan Rouhani, he's trying to do the same thing. He's saying to the United States, you know, you're putting more sanctions on us. Of course, these sanctions come in response to Iranian provocations, but he's trying to turn it into an aggressive stance being adopted by the U.S., and again, trying to cow the Trump administration into backing down by saying that they'll leave the deal.
Many experts would say that these are, in fact, empty threats, that he does not want to let go of the deal.
It's not in Iran's interest. That's why, by the way, all the talk about the fact that the deal is working because Iran is more or less in compliance, and it's more or less in compliance because they're not fully in compliance, but that doesn't mean that the deal is working. The deal is a very problematic deal. It has been from day one. Those problems still exist, and why wouldn't Iran comply more or less with a deal that's not bad from its point of view? It doesn't have any interest right now to leave that deal. It got a lot of sanctions relief. It got a lot of money from that deal. It's not in its interest. It will, you know, wait out now it's already 8.5 to 13.5 years before the deal expires. Then they will have a vast nuclear infrastructure, and then it will be, you know, a better time.
Right. Speaking of expert opinion, I suppose you could say most experts agree that the world perhaps is heading to accepting a nuclear-armed North Korea. Is this setting a dangerous precedent for Iran?
I think it really is. I think the lesson of North Korea, first of all, we see the United States and North Korea now entering a new stage where they're trying to base new rules of the game, new deterrent rules of the game for living with this new reality. I don't believe that there's any chance of denuclearization of North Korea. They worked for a long time, 25 years at least, to get where they are today. All the ideas for getting them to denuclearize through negotiations failed. It's 25 years of failed negotiations. They are a nuclear state, and now we see everyone reorganizing. The lesson for Iran is that once the state crosses the nuclear threshold, you're not going to be able to turn that around. Right now, Iran is not yet a nuclear state, but if everyone's, you know, rests on the laurels of this Iran nuclear deal, which is a very problematic deal, and they're lulled into thinking, you know, we can put the check in the box and move on, like we see from the Europeans. We see the, you know, Federica Mogherini going to Iran, praising the president. They're all interested in making making business deals. This will ease Iran's way to nuclear weapons.
Just briefly to that point, and then we'll move on from this. You spoke out against the 2015 nuclear deal and the efficiency of such an agreement. What, in your view, would make a better deal?
Well, it's a done deal now, and I don't think it can be reopened and renegotiated. They should have done a lot of things differently in the negotiation stage. They had leverage at that time. It took them, so long to get the effective sanctions that brought Iran to the table, and then rather than using that leverage to get the deal they wanted, they started making concessions to Iran. So a lot of mistakes were made. We got a deal, as I said, highly problematic. What to do now? I would say it's not a good idea to leave the deal, for the United States to leave the deal. I think it's a done deal. It's there, but change almost everything else with regard to U.S. policy towards Iran. Stop turning a blind eye to provocations. Do the things you need to do. Things we've been hearing from Nikki Haley, from others in the Trump administration, with all the problematics surrounding the U.S. administration on this particular issue, they've actually been going in the right direction.
Sure. On another issue involving Iran, this week we saw Israeli satellite images purporting to show Syrian missile manufacturing facilities allegedly being overseen by Iran. How does Israel view this?
With a great deal of concern. First, the reports were that Iran was setting up these factories in Lebanon. Recent reports say that it's even happening in Syria. Obviously, Iran is interested in setting up these factories so that they can manufacture missiles and other weaponry domestically, so they take care of their vulnerability with having to transfer things from Iran to Lebanon, to Hezbollah's hands in Lebanon. We saw what happens when Iran tries to transfer. Israel gets wind of these problematic weapons transfers, and Israel, I think it's pretty clear that Israel has taken action on a number of occasions to stop that. So if you have the factory in Lebanon, if you have the factories in Syria, you're better able to deal with that vulnerability. It's a big concern.
Right. Let's look at regional politics here. We're hearing reports about a potential Iraqi-led mediation between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Is this something for the Middle East to be looking forward to?
Look, there is a great rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia, that's clear. I actually look at that issue from a different perspective, slightly different perspective. We see actually that the Arab Gulf states are coming closer to Israel because we have a common threat perception with regard to Iran. Where I see the opportunity here is for better cooperation between Israel and these states, perhaps setting up some kind of regional security dialogue framework for us in the Middle East. In other words, the fact that we have this common perception is an opportunity for getting our act together here in the Middle East.
Dr. Emily Landau, thank you so much for that insight.
You're welcome.